The moon hung low over Hollow Creek, a quiet mountain town in northern Colorado where everyone knew everyone, and no one forgot a rumor. The autumn wind carried the scent of pine and rain as the townsfolk gathered around the bonfire that blazed in the center of the clearing. It was the night of the Harvest Festival, a tradition older than the town itself, older even than the church bells that marked its beginning. For most, it was a night of dancing, laughter, and stories whispered beneath the stars. For Isla Marin, it was a night of pretending not to exist. She stood at the edge of the crowd, the light from the fire tracing the faint, pale scars that ran down the left side of her face, the remains of a fire that had taken her mother, their home, and half of Isla's childhood along with it. She had been 12 then. She was 20 now, and the scars had healed, but the town had not. "Hide your face, Isla," someone had once whispered when she was 14. "You'll scare the children." She had stopped attending festivals after that. But tonight the invitation had come with the Alpha's seal. An order, not a request. And when the Alpha summoned, you obeyed. So she had come. Wrapped in her plain gray cloak, hood drawn low, she stood apart from the crowd as laughter rippled through the clearing. The others wore fine clothes and masks carved from silver and bone. Isla wore none. She had no one to hide for. Until the music stopped. The crowd shifted. A murmur swept through them. "He's here," someone whispered. Through the smoke and firelight, Alpha Kale Thorn appeared. He moved like shadow given form, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in black that shimmered faintly under the moonlight. His presence was quiet, but it filled the space like thunder fills a storm. People bowed as he passed, heads lowered. Isla froze. She had never seen him up close before, only from afar. The Alpha who had inherited both the pack and the town, who ruled with fairness but distance, whose eyes were said to glow silver when angered. And now those same eyes, cold, steady, were looking directly at her. The crowd parted as he crossed the clearing. Isla's throat went dry. When he stopped before her, she bowed instinctively, pulling her hood lower. "Alpha." His voice was deep, rough like gravel. "Look at me." She hesitated, then lifted her head. The firelight flickered against her scars. The whispering began immediately. Why her? Why is he speaking to her? She shouldn't even be here. Kale's gaze didn't move. "What is your name?" She swallowed. "Isla Marin." "Marin," he repeated quietly. "Your father was a blacksmith." "Was," she said. "He died last winter." "I know," Kale said. "He served my family once." The silence between them thickened until Isla couldn't breathe. She lowered her eyes again. "If I've done something wrong, my lord, You haven't." His tone softened, almost imperceptibly. "Dance with me." Isla blinked. "What?" The whispering turned to gasps. Kale extended his hand. "Dance with me," he repeated, voice calm but unyielding. "I can't," she stammered. "People. Let them look," he said. "They've done it all your life." Her pulse raced. She wanted to refuse, to run. But something in his eyes stopped her. It wasn't pity. It wasn't command. It was recognition. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. The warmth of his skin spread through her like fire. As the music resumed, Kale guided her into the center of the clearing. The crowd fell silent again. The Alpha and the scarred daughter. The sight was almost sacrilege. Isla moved stiffly at first, but Kale's hand at her back steadied her. He led her through the steps effortlessly, his gaze never leaving hers. "You're trembling," he murmured. "I'm not used to being watched." "You've always been watched," he said. "They just never looked long enough to see you." Her heart pounded. "Why now?" Kale's voice was low, steady. "Because you came back when everyone expected you to hide." "I didn't have a choice." "You did," he said. "And you still came." The music slowed. The world seemed to fall away until there was nothing but the rhythm of her heartbeat and the heat of his hand against her spine. When the final note faded, he didn't release her hand. Instead, he turned toward the crowd. "You whisper about her scars," he said. his voice carrying easily across the clearing. But none of you stood in the fire that made them. A ripple of silence spread through the townsfolk. Kale's gaze swept over them, sharp as a blade. You speak of beauty as if it were skin deep. But beauty, he said, turning back to Isla, is endurance. The crowd shifted, uneasy. Isla felt every eye on her, her chest tight with shame and disbelief. Please, she whispered. You don't have to. I do, he said quietly. Then, without warning, he lifted her hand to his lips and kissed the scars that ran across her knuckles. Slow, deliberate, reverent. The clearing gasped. The fire hissed. Isla froze, unable to move, unable even to breathe. When he looked at her again, his eyes had changed, silver burning faint beneath the surface. Do not hide from them again, he said. They should be the ones who look away. And then he turned, walking back through the stunned crowd, leaving her standing in the firelight, her hand still trembling where his lips had been. The whispers started again, softer this time, uncertain. But Isla didn't hear them. Her pulse thundered in her ears, her skin still warm from his touch. She looked up at the moon, bright and whole, and for the first time in years she didn't wish it would hide. Because the Alpha had seen her. And something in the way he looked at her, in the way his voice wrapped around her name, felt like the beginning of a story she wasn't supposed to have. The morning after the harvest festival dawned pale and cold, the mist rolling off the mountains like smoke. The town of Hollow Creek was quiet. Too quiet. Even the crows seemed hesitant to cry out. Isla woke to the soft creak of wind against her window. Her small cottage, tucked at the edge of the woods, smelled faintly of ash and pine. For a long time she just sat there, watching the sunlight struggle through the fog. She could still feel his touch. Alpha Kale Thorn's lips on her hand. The weight of his gaze. The silence that had swallowed the clearing after he spoke. Every time she closed her eyes, it replayed. The dance, the whispers, the way the firelight had reflected in his eyes like a storm barely contained. And then the voice in her mind, her own, small and frightened, whispering, "Why me?" The answer didn't come. When she finally stepped outside, the town's stares met her like arrows. Children paused in their games. Women hushed their gossip mid-sentence. Even the butcher stopped sharpening his knife. "Morning, Miss Marin," he said after a moment, voice cautious. The Alphas made quite the impression. She forced a polite smile. "So I've heard." As she passed, whispers followed her like shadows. "Did you see the way he looked at her? It must be pity. No enchantment. She's cursed, they say." Isla quickened her pace, her heart pounding. She hated the way they spoke his name in the same breath as hers. Felt wrong, dangerous, like tempting lightning to strike twice. By the time she reached the edge of the forest, she couldn't stand the noise anymore. The woods were her refuge. Quiet, cool, safe. The scent of pine needles and wet earth wrapped around her like a memory. She wandered deeper until the town was gone, replaced by birdsong and the hum of unseen streams. But the peace didn't last. A twig snapped behind her. Isla turned sharply. "Who's there?" No answer, just the low sigh of wind through the trees. Then another sound. A soft rustle, deliberate. Her pulse quickened. And before she could run, a voice, low, smooth, familiar, came from behind her. "You shouldn't walk this far alone." She froze. "Alpha." Kale stepped from the shadows, his black coat damp with dew. His hair slightly tousled by the wind. He looked different by daylight, less myth, more man, though the intensity in his eyes hadn't dimmed. He stopped a few feet away, his gaze searching her face. "You left the festival quickly." "I'm not built for crowds," she said quietly. "Or for the things they say." She looked down, her hands twisting in her cloak. "They have the right. I'm used to it." "Don't get used to cruelty, Isla," Kale said. "It makes you forget what respect feels like." His tone was calm, but beneath it was something sharper. Frustration or maybe guilt. She hesitated. "Why did you do it?" He raised an eyebrow. "Do what?" Last night, she said, her voice trembling. Why me? He studied her for a long moment. Because no one else had the courage to see you. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. The air between them thickened. Isla could hear the distant rush of the creek, the slow rhythm of his breathing, the faint thrum in her own chest. I embarrassed you, she said softly. They'll talk. Let them. You can't afford scandal, not as Alpha. I've survived worse than gossip. She met his gaze. Then what is this? Kale stepped closer. His scent, cedar and smoke, surrounded her. This is me keeping a promise. Her breath caught. To who? To your father, he said. The world seemed to tilt. My father. Kale nodded. Before the fire, before the storm that took your mother. He served under me. When he died, I swore I'd look after you. But when I came back from the war, you were gone. And the town said you'd turned bitter, that you wanted to be left alone. I did, she said faintly. Because there was nothing left to stay for. He looked at her, his jaw tight. Then I was too late. She shook her head. You owe me nothing. Maybe not, he said. But I owe him everything. For a moment, the forest was silent but for the distant call of a hawk. Then Isla asked quietly, and what now? You kissed the hand of the cursed girl. What happens when the rest of the pack decides you've gone mad? His mouth twitched, the faintest hint of a smile. Then they'll learn what madness looks like when it has teeth. The words sent a shiver through her. Before she could speak, a sudden sound tore through the stillness, a deep, resonant howl from somewhere far off. Kale's eyes flicked upward, his body tensing. They've found us. Who? The Nightborn, he said. Rogues. They've crossed the border again. Isla's stomach turned. Here. He nodded once. They hunt weakness. His gaze snapped back to her, sharp and bright. You shouldn't be here. I'm not afraid, she said, though her voice betrayed her. He stepped closer. You should be. The howl came again, closer this time, answered by another, then another. Kale's eyes flashed silver. Run. She hesitated. What about you? He gave her a small, crooked smile, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. I'm not the one they're hunting. And before she could stop him, he was gone. A blur of movement disappearing into the trees, the sound of snapping branches trailing behind him like thunder. Isla stood frozen, heart hammering, torn between terror and the unbearable pull to follow. Then she heard it, the crash of something massive in the distance, the snarl of beasts, and one voice rising above it all. Kale's, low and fierce and inhuman. The forest trembled around her. And for the first time, Isla realized the truth the town had whispered about for years. The Alpha of Hollow Creek wasn't just a man. He was the storm they feared in the dark. And he was fighting it for her. The forest was no longer quiet. Roared. Wolves, massive, black as shadow, darted between the trees, their eyes glinting red in the moonlight. The air was thick with the scent of iron and pine, of snow about to fall. Slaran. Branches tore at her cloak, the ground slick beneath her boots. She didn't dare look back, but she could hear the growls closing in. Deep, hungry, unnatural. And above it all, a single sound tore through the chaos. Kale's snarl. It wasn't human. It wasn't beast. It was something between, something older, something dangerous. When she reached the ridge above Hollow Creek, the moon broke through the clouds, bathing the forest in silver light. She stopped, panting, her heart pounding. Below, the world had turned to fury. Kale was on the ground, surrounded by 3 night-born wolves. Their forms massive, twisted, wrong. They moved with a kind of broken grace, as if held together by rage alone. But Kale, even outnumbered, fought like he'd been born of the storm itself. His claws glinted silver in the moonlight, his body a blur of movement, his growl shaking the trees. One wolf lunged. He caught it midair, twisting, snapping its neck in a motion so quick it looked unreal. Another came from behind. He spun, catching its throat with his teeth. Blood hit the snow like ink. But the third, larger, faster, slammed into him, driving him to the ground. "Kale!" Isla screamed. Her voice echoed through the forest, and in that instant all three creatures turned toward her. Kale's eyes shot open. He saw her, and his expression changed. Rage, terror, desperation. "Run!" he bellowed. But before she could move, the surviving wolf lunged toward her, covering the ground in an instant. The world slowed. Isla raised her hands, a useless reflex, and the air shimmered. A blinding flash erupted between her and the wolf, silver light exploding outward. The creature hit the barrier and screamed, its body thrown backward, burning where the light touched it. The forest went still. Kale stared at her from the ground, his chest heaving. His voice, when it came, was low and rough. "What did you do?" I don't know," Isla stammered. "It just happened." He rose slowly, blood streaking his arms. His eyes flickering between silver and something deeper, something primal. He took a step toward her. "Show me your hands." She hesitated. "Now, Isla." She lifted them. They were trembling, glowing faintly where the light had come from, the scars on her palms shining like veins of moonlight. Kale's breath caught. "I knew it." "Knew what?" He looked at her, really looked, and the world seemed to stop between them. "You're not cursed," he said softly. "You're marked. Marked. The fire that scarred you, it didn't come from the house. It came from you." Her stomach dropped. "That's not possible." He shook his head. "It is. Your mother wasn't just human, Isla. She was one of us. One of the moonbound, the first wolves blessed by the goddess. But when the bloodline weakened, the power turned inward. It burned instead of changed." She stared at him, unable to breathe. "You're saying I'm half wolf," he said quietly. "Half something more." The words hung between them, wild and unbelievable. Isla shook her head. "No, I've never changed. I've never felt anything." Kale stepped closer. "You think I kissed your scars because I pitied them?" She froze. "What are you saying?" "I kissed them because I felt them. The power in your blood called to mine. I didn't understand it until now." The air between them hummed, low and dangerous. "Kale," she whispered. "What does that mean?" "It means the bond has already started." Her pulse raced. "Bond?" He nodded once. "Between us. Between alpha and mate." The words hit her like lightning. "No," she breathed. "That can't be. You don't even know me." His voice deepened, rough with something primal. "The blood doesn't need to know. It remembers." She stepped back. "I didn't ask for this." "Neither did I." For a moment they just stared at each other, the fire of the bond flickering between them, alive and merciless. Then Kale flinched, a low growl rumbling from his chest. He staggered, dropping to one knee. "Kale!" He gritted his teeth. "The connection, it's too fast. It's pulling me." She knelt beside him, grabbing his shoulders. "Pulling you where?" "To you," he growled. "Your blood's calling me. If I don't fight it, what happens?" He lifted his head, his eyes pure silver now. "I'll lose control." The wind howled through the trees. "Then stop fighting it," she whispered. He froze. "Isla, you don't know what you're saying." She met his gaze. "Maybe I do." For a long heartbeat, nothing moved. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath. Then Kale reached up, his hand trembling as it cupped her face. His touch was fever-hot, his pulse racing under his skin. "If I give in," he said hoarsely, "there's no turning back." She leaned closer, her voice barely a whisper. "Then don't turn back." And as the moon broke free of the clouds, he kissed her, not gently, not carefully, but with the force of something ancient breaking open. The power between them surged, wild and electric. Her scars flared with silver light, his body shaking with the effort to contain the change tearing through him. When they finally pulled apart, his breath was ragged, his forehead resting against hers. "You don't know what you've done," he murmured. Yes, she whispered. I do. And beneath the moon that had cursed them both, the alpha and the scarred girl became something new, bound not by fate but by fire. Neither of them knew it yet, but their union would awaken what the pack had feared for generations. The return of the true moon-bound blood. And with it, the beginning of war. The moon hung high and merciless over Hollow Creek that night, painting the mountains silver and the world below in shades of shadow. The air crackled with tension, not the kind that could be seen, but the kind that made the hair on your arms rise and the pulse in your throat stutter. Isla could still feel his kiss. The way it had burned through her, not as pain but as recognition. Every heartbeat since had carried an echo of it. But Cale was gone. He'd vanished before dawn, leaving behind only a smear of ash where he'd stood and a scent of cedar and smoke that clung to the walls of her cottage. The villagers whispered again, louder now. The Alpha's gone mad. He's been bewitched. The scarred girl is the curse reborn. By midday, they were already lighting torches. And by sunset, Isla stood at the edge of the forest, staring at the glow of fire spreading through her town, the same way she had once watched her home burn years ago. The world, it seemed, had a cruel way of repeating itself. Cale didn't return until the second night. He came out of the darkness like the storm itself, soaked, blood-stained, his eyes still faintly glowing. He looked more wolf than man, his muscles trembling with exhaustion and restraint. Isla, he rasped. She turned, her cloak whipping in the wind. You left. I had to. You always say that, she said, her voice breaking. You had to stay away. You had to hide me. You had to protect me. But what happens when I decide I don't need your protection anymore? He stared at her, chest heaving, jaw tight. You think I left because I wanted to? Didn't you? I left, he said, his voice low, because the bond is growing stronger. I can feel your heartbeat in my blood. Every time I breathe, it's you. If I stayed. What? She whispered. You'd lose control. He looked away, his throat tight. Yes. Then lose it, she said fiercely. He froze. Cale, she said, stepping closer, her eyes shining with something between anger and need. I'm done being afraid of what I am. You keep talking about the danger in my blood, in yours. But what if it's not danger? What if it's the truth? His voice dropped to a whisper. You don't understand what you're asking. I do, she said. I'm asking you not to leave me again. The silence between them pulsed like a heartbeat. Cale's hand shook. He wanted to step back to stop himself, but the pull was too strong, the ancient bond between them tightening like a thread around his soul. When she reached up and touched his face, his breath caught. Her touch burned, not painfully but like moonlight touching frost. Look at me, she said. He did. And in that moment he was lost. His lips found hers before he could think. The kiss was rough, desperate, the kind that leaves nothing untouched. She gasped against him, her hands tangling in his hair, her body trembling with the same power that had flared the night before. The ground beneath them shuddered. The trees bent as if bowing to something holy and terrible. The moon itself seemed to blaze brighter. But then something changed. Cale's body went rigid. His breath turned ragged. His eyes flared white, not silver. Cale, Isla whispered, pulling back. He dropped to his knees, clutching his chest. No, he choked out. It's not supposed to. She knelt beside him. What's happening? The bond, he gasped. It's consuming me. You've awakened it completely. It's calling to the old blood. She grabbed his shoulders. Then fight it. I can't. His voice broke. It's too strong. Isla, you have to run. I won't. He looked up at her, and for an instant she didn't see the man she knew. She saw the Alpha in full, the beast beneath the skin, the creature born from moonlight and rage. His bones shifted under his flesh, his teeth lengthened, his body contorted. But even through the transformation, his eyes found hers. Don't look away, he growled. No matter what you see. He didn't. He let the change take him, and it was both horrifying and beautiful. His body broke and rebuilt itself, sinew and fur and light fusing together until a massive wolf stood before her. His coat black and silver, his breath steaming in the cold air. The wolf's eyes glowed with the same fire that had once filled Kale's. Isla reached out a trembling hand. "Kale," she whispered. "It's still you." The wolf took a step closer, lowering its head. It was trembling, not from rage but from restraint. She could see it in the tension of its muscles, in the way it fought against its own nature. She touched his fur, her fingers sinking into warmth and heartbeat and power. And then softly she said, "You're not the monster they say you are." Something shifted. The wolf froze and then exhaled, a sound almost like a sigh. The air shimmered, and when it cleared, Kale was kneeling before her again, naked, broken, human. His voice was barely a whisper. "You saved me." "No," she said, tears streaming down her face. "You saved yourself." He looked at her, his hand trembling as he touched her cheek. "The bond's complete now." "What does that mean?" "It means we share the curse," he said. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." Isla nodded, her heart pounding. "Then let it come." But as she said the words, the first howl rose from the ridge. Deep, haunting, familiar. Not Nightborn. Kale stiffened. "They're coming. For you?" she asked. "For us." He stood, pulling her up with him. "The council won't let this bond stand. They'll see it as defiance. As blasphemy. Then they'll have to kill both of us," she said. He smiled faintly, his eyes soft despite the fear in them. "They'll try." The howls grew closer. The moonlight thickened. And as the two of them stood together beneath its glow, the scarred daughter and the cursed alpha, the choice became clear. Run and hide again or stand and burn the old world down. Kale reached for her hand. "You said you weren't afraid." "I'm not," she whispered. He squeezed her hand once. "Then let's make them remember what fear feels like." The wind howled through the trees, carrying their vow into the night. And as the first shapes of the pack emerged through the mist, Kale's eyes flashed silver once more, not as warning but as promise. The moon watched, silent witness to the moment the hunted became the hunters. The night the pack came for them, the world held its breath. Snow had begun to fall again, fine and silent, drifting through the pine branches like ash. The forest below Hollow Creek glowed faintly in the moonlight, but where Isla and Kale stood on the ridge above the valley, the light felt cold and final. He stood beside her, tall, still, his coat unbuttoned, the wind catching the edges like wings. The scars across his chest shimmered faintly silver, the mark of his transformation. Isla could feel the echo of it inside her too, that low hum under her skin, the pulse that wasn't entirely her own anymore. "They'll be here soon," Kale said quietly. Isla nodded. "I know." The howls in the distance were getting louder, layered. Not wild but ordered. The sound of a pack on the hunt. She swallowed. "What happens if we can't stop them?" He glanced at her. "Then we don't stop. Not until they understand." "Understand what?" "That this isn't a curse," he said. "It's a rebirth." She looked at him. The alpha who had once kissed her scars before all the town, the man who had turned his own blood into rebellion. "You sound like someone who believes in miracles." His mouth twitched faintly. "I believe in you." The words settled in her chest like warmth after winter. Down below, the first wolves broke from the tree line. Dozens of them, their coats gleaming silver, their eyes reflecting the moon. At their head walked 3 figures in black cloaks. "The council." "Kale Thorn," one of them called. His voice carried easily across the clearing. "You stand accused of breaking the Alpha Bond and defying the Moon Law. Step forward." Kale didn't move. "No." The man's jaw tightened. "Then by the rights of the pack, we'll take you by force." Isla stepped forward before Kale could stop her. "You'll have to take me too." The murmurs rippled through the gathered wolves, Confusion, anger, disbelief. The council leader stared at her, his expression one of disgust. "The half-blood," he said. "The scarred one." Kale's growl rumbled like thunder. "Say her name again." The man hesitated. "She's not one of us." "Then maybe us is the problem," Kale said. The leader's eyes narrowed. "You've let her poison your blood, Alpha. You've forgotten what we are." "No," Kale said, his voice low and steady. "I remember exactly what we are. Beasts who call their fear tradition." A sharp growl rippled through the pack. Isla felt the air shift. The moon above burned brighter, and for a moment everything shimmered silver. The snow, the trees, the edges of her own hands. Her pulse quickened. "Kale," she whispered. "It's happening again." He looked at her, and his expression changed. Not fear. Oh. The light spreading through her wasn't wild this time. It was controlled. Life. The moon answered her blood. Isla lifted her chin, stepping forward until she stood at the edge of the ridge. Her voice carried, clear and calm. "You call me cursed," she said. "But the curse was never mine. It was yours, the one that told you strength meant cruelty. That purity meant power. That scars meant shame." The council leader scoffed. "You think your words will change centuries of law?" She looked down at her glowing hands. "No," she said softly. "But this might." The air cracked open. A wave of silver light burst outward, sweeping across the clearing. The wolves below staggered, their snarls turning to gasps as the energy washed over them. Not pain but memory. In that moment each one saw it. The first moon-bound, the night the goddess had given them their form, not as monsters but as protectors. When the light faded, the snow glowed faintly with runes of ancient power. The leader dropped to his knees, trembling. What have you done?" Isla's eyes shimmered with tears. "I reminded you who you were." Kale stepped beside her, resting a hand on her shoulder. "The law is broken," he said. "And from tonight forward, no one will live chained by it again." The pack lowered their heads. One by one wolves knelt, not in submission but in understanding. The council leader looked up at them, eyes wide with disbelief. "You can't lead them," he said. "You'll destroy everything we've built." Kale's voice was quiet. "Maybe it's time it burned." Then he turned to Isla. "You end it." She hesitated. "How?" He nodded toward the moon. "You're its heir now." The light above brightened, white fire pouring across the ridge. Isla closed her eyes and let it fill her. The energy burned through her scars, turning them from reminders of pain into marks of power. When she raised her arms, the wind itself bent around her. Her voice was barely a whisper, but it carried like thunder. No more chains. No more blood for blood. The glow surged, then vanished, leaving only silence and the steady sound of falling snow. When Isla opened her eyes, the wolves were gone, shifted back into their human forms, dazed but free. The council's medallions, symbols of their control, lay melted in the snow. It was done. Kale turned to her slowly, awe written across his face. "You did it." She looked at him, tears glimmering in her eyes. "We did." He smiled, exhaustion softening his features. "You look different." "How?" "Whole." She laughed through her tears. Maybe for the first time. Kale reached for her hand, his fingers brushing the edge of the scar on her wrist, the first place he'd ever kissed her. "They'll tell stories about you," he murmured. She shook her head. "Then let them. I'm done hiding." The wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of rain. The snow began to melt beneath their feet. "Where will we go?" she asked quietly. Kale looked toward the horizon, where the mountains met the dawn. "Anywhere the moon can find us." She smiled. "Then it will never lose us." The light rose behind them, touching the forest, the rivers, the quiet town below. Hollow Creek would wake to a new world, one no longer ruled by fear, but by something stronger. The Alpha and the scarred girl stood together, hand in hand, their silhouettes framed by the first golden light of morning. And for the first time since the fire, Isla Marin felt the warmth not as pain, but as promise. Because beneath the same moon that had once cursed her, the Alpha had kissed her wounds, and in doing so, taught her that even the broken can be sacred.